sifting through the rubbish for scraps, trying to piece together some sort of life. They fled Aleppo province to escape the war, but it followed them to Idlib. Now this is their sanctuary, their best bet, surviving on what little they can scavenge from the pitiful waste of a country decimated by 8 years of war. In any other life, Riyam might be top of the class. But there is no other life, just a new avalanche of rubbish to sift through. At last, some treasure, albeit plastic and broken, among the ruins. For Riyam, things are good now. She sings a soundtrack at odds with their story. For Azam, a double win. A tin can to sell, and inside the dregs of a drink. A piece of rotten food is to be shared, health warnings ignored, proof that beggars literally can't be choosers. The power and pleasure of friends in this scrapyard of a playground, no different here than anywhere else. Lunch today, though, is unusual. An unexpected gift bought by the filmmaker, shared out with precision by Riyam. But their enjoyment of what they have in this moment, a measure perhaps of just how much they have lost.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jose Prado of Man-Made Survival, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today because I have so many podcasts that I need to do today and a lot of information that I gotta bring to you. So I'm really glad that you're listening to this. And if you're listening to this through the speaker platform, I really do appreciate you tuning in and listening to this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, Brighteon, Facebook, Parler, whichever it is, whichever social media it is that you're listening to this through, I really do appreciate it as well. And I would really appreciate it also if you can hit the like button, if you can subscribe to the channel or, page, whatever it is you're listening to this through. I would really appreciate it because this is only going to help get this information out. Because I really do believe that I'm bringing you precious information that no other prepper platform is probably doing. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but I can only speak for myself. But what I'm saying is that you're here, you're getting this information that I brought to you, that I put together, the perspectives, on prepping, on how reality is out there, and not just what we fantasize as preppers, and all the things that we need to do to make sure that you take the proper steps for you and your family to be prepared for whatever it is that may come our way. And there is a right way to do it. That is the main thing that I want everybody to get in this podcast, if you don't get anything else, is that there's a proper way to do it. All right. One of the main things that I've seen on Reddit, that I've seen on other platforms and forums and everything like that, is that people are very oriented to the one thing that they can hack for whatever it is that they're surviving for, instead of doing the proper way of obtaining the things that they're going to need to change their life. All right. So this is the thing that I really have pondered upon, and I've been thinking for a while now. And actually, when I talked to Jefferson about this, that's the first time I mentioned it. So hopefully you listened to that interview. But if you haven't, I really encourage you to go back and listen to it because there's a lot of information there. But really what I want to do, ever since I started this podcast a year and a half ago, my thinking has really been shifting. Because instead of, you really learn about the subject when you are teaching to somebody else. When you're doing a podcast, when you actually do the research and you look at the things that do work and don't work and everything like that. And, when I did the interview with Mike Adams, he asked me what Men-Made Survival stand for, right? Or why did I choose that name for the podcast and for the company or whatever. And the honest to God answer is that we just like the name. We were going through the list of names that were already out there. We were thinking of our own. We came out with Men-Made Survival. But I really do think that, at least I really want to believe that God has something to do with it, because Men-Made Survival has kind of like had this evolution period where actually it went from just being a name that we like to something that has a meaning now. Because really, survival is something that we do, right? It's something that you have to take the steps for in order for you and your family to be prepared for future things that can happen. And most of the things we're seeing them right now. So really, it's up to you. It's a man-made thing that has to happen for your survival. You have to take care, the initiative to actually say, all right, the grid can fall, the supply chain can fall. I'm going to do everything possible in my power to make sure that me and my family survive. But the whole survival mantra, the whole survival thinking really has to shift in the prepper community because, what I've been reading, what I've been seeing on Reddit and everything, like I mentioned a minute ago, is that we're just hacking things. It's not just something that, or most of the time, are things that really don't make any sense, or it wouldn't really make a difference if you actually hack whatever it is that they're hacking. So we need to shift our idea. We need to shift our mind from really getting the survival out of preparedness, because it's not just the one thing you're trying to survive. What you're doing with survival is that you're adjusting your lifestyle for whenever something happens, you can transform it. And if you're already doing it each and every day, then it's going to be better for you and your family and everybody else. So survival can no longer, or at least in this era that we're in right now, it can no longer be a hobby. It has to be something that you have to look at and actually let it be your life, actually change your lifestyle. There's the right way to do it, because if you don't take these steps seriously right now, later on, you're going to regret it. And that's one of the main things that I've actually heard people discuss when preppers or other people interview people from Venezuela, preppers from Venezuela, because Venezuela was once a country like the United States. It was the most rich country in South America. Excuse me. And all the privileges, all the commodities, all the things that you enjoy here in the United States, they did in Venezuela at one point. All right, everything that you know about the United States, it was there. Okay, because sometimes the thinking is that people outside the United States are mega poor and they don't know what luxuries are, or they don't know what being comfortable is. They're always fighting for something. That's not the case. There's rich people all over the world, there's poor people all over the world, and there's the middle class all over the world. But Venezuela, from what it used to be to what it is now, is completely different. And one of the things that I've heard from people being interviewed that used to live in Venezuela, because they had to get out of there, is that they thought that the preps was enough. And they realized that all the garbage that right now is, overwhelming the prepper community is not going to work when we actually do need it. So we have to shift from being a hobby to being a way of life. And if we all do that right now, the things that are coming, the things that are here, are not going to affect us as much. Okay, so this podcast is going to be very, very different from anything that you have seen coming out of this podcast, out of Mem and Survival podcast. And the reason that I say that is because I'm taking this idea further out from just being in the United States, because we do live in the most rich country in the world. We have a bunch of possibilities. We have, all these products that we can choose from. It's not just the one thing, but it's the one item with multiple companies doing the same item. You have all these, I can't say the word properly, but this variety of things that that you can choose from wherever it is, whether it's, cars, cell phones, grocery store, clothing, whatever the case may be. There's this vast, option list that you can get. But when we look at other countries around the world, you see how little and very limited their choices are. And we are going to have to look, at least in this podcast, to look at both sides. Something that you already know from the United States, so I don't really have to talk about it, right? Because you live here. You already know how it is. But what I want to do is take you to the other extreme, to the very poorest countries in all 7 continents around the world. But technically 6 because nobody lives in Antarctica. But my point is that what I'm gonna do in this podcast is that I'm gonna bring you the 6 poorest nations in all different 6 continents and see how they live, what they eat, what the unemployment is, what the the social safety nets are, and whether or not they're preppers there. And one of the things that I've been saying in this podcast over and over, and mainly I've been saying it recently, is that I really do believe that preparedness could be an answer to poverty. Especially if we can get the ball rolling right now. If you're in the United States, you can do that because you live in the most, rich country in the world, at least for now. And if things were to get that bad as to the extreme that I'm taking it, then you're going to fall somewhere in the middle where you're going to be better off than the people who did not prep at all. And they could end up at the extreme. Okay. And that's what I'm going to be showing you in this podcast. All right. So the first continent that I'm going to be showing you is from Asia. And Asia is a really big landmass, but the poorest country, as I found it, is Afghanistan. And I opened up this podcast with a video from the children going through the rubbish and, trying to find food, whatever it is, right? It's a regular day for them, and, they do that every day. Actually, they're not the only ones that do that around the world, but that is something that that you saw in the beginning of the podcast. Now, the same thing happens in Mexico. There's a lot of people going through the rubbish. The same thing goes for India. Just think of poor countries that are more popular and the same thing happens. And I want you to avoid that. I want your children to avoid that. I want my children, my grandchildren to avoid that. So we have to prepare right now. So I want to start off Afghanistan with a video that I found so you can see how the poverty is. And really, it's not so much that they are mega poor, but you're going to be able to see people who are struggling and they're like not homeless, but a step right before it. All right, so here's the first video.
For 51-year-old Ahmad Nasir, leftover food is the only affordable dinner that he can buy for his family. Hundreds of people come to this market in the centre of Kabul to buy leftovers from restaurants and government offices. Despite the billions of dollars foreign agencies and governments have spent in Afghanistan over the last 2 decades, people here are still some of the poorest in the world.
When I look at this government, I see everyone is stealing. They don't care about poor people. There were days when I came home from work with no food for my children. We all went to sleep with an empty stomach. We cried all night in the dark, but no one came to help us.
Nasir was a teacher but lost his job. Now he works on the streets selling second-hand shoes. He's the only breadwinner for his family of 6. He works 12 hours a day, and on a good day his income is around $3.
There are many others living in worse conditions than me. It's painful when I see this level of poverty.
His wife Fawzia stays at home to take care of 4 of their children. 2 of them are ill and they can't afford the treatment.
It's very painful for me when I look at my children. I wish I could help.
International aid organisations are concerned the situation could get worse.
Poverty is endemic, so of course more help is needed. Of course, sustained international engagement is really crucial to help Afghanistan not only find peace, but to find future stability and prosperity, where the conversation is not about aid, but about trade.
Nasir's children are too young to understand what the future holds for their generation. But for millions of Afghans who've experienced war and poverty, their situation remains bleak. Sara Khairat, Al Jazeera.
All right, so Afghanistan is a country that we're all familiar with because, we've been at war with them for almost 20 years. And, technically not 100% in war, but my point is that we've been there for at least 20 years. And I want you to understand that even though they had war, they have poverty, it's not like there's no homes there. There's not people who get used to their environment. And that's one of the things that I really want to get across because, the things that we think about preparedness here in the United States, or, you know, when we think about how the future may turn out, is that everybody just goes crazy and everybody for themselves, and, you know, it's going to be like that forever, which obviously is not. You know, one of the things that you're going to be able to get from this podcast, looking through all of this, is that even though there's a moment of chaos where things do get dangerous, with, you know, people don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, there comes a time where everybody in the country, in the region, in the neighborhood, you know, it starts getting used to their environment, how the new normal is. And, you know, that new normal is a phrase that we've listened to since last year. But there is a moment where everything stabilizes, and you have to, you know, keep living from that point on. Whether you know, the United States becomes a new country, whether it's the same country but new policies, whether we get a new currency, you know, whatever the case may be. Even though there might be a period of time where things are going to become chaotic, things will get back to a place where everything stabilizes. All right, and that's the reason why I keep saying that we have to shift our thinking from surviving the one thing that's going to happen to really adjusting our way of life to the life after that event happens. Okay, Afghanistan has a population of 39,768,233 people. The rate of inflation there is only 5.61%. Actually, Afghanistan right now has less inflation than we have in the United States. So things are not that bad as far as inflation is. But since there's unemployment and everything like that, things are more expensive. People eat less. You know, they have to really make sure that their resources go to the proper places. The national minimum wage in Afghanistan, according to Google, the Afghanistan minimum wage is 5,000 Afghani per month for government workers, with no minimum set for private sector workers, but labor laws forbid a lower wage. Informal sector days workers have no minimum wage set by the law. So in other words, there's no minimum wage unless you work for the government. So you can work a job all day long and not get paid anything. That is the reason why a lot of companies from the United States, a lot of manufacturing was sent to China, because the same, you know, it's kind of like the same idea over there. You know, since labor is so cheap, we can get the products done over there, ship over to the United States, sell for a profit, but things are lower. All right, the wages are, the price of everything is lower, because if everything was brought to the United States, then things were, you know, normally or naturally inflate because the labors are more expensive here. That is the reason why the manufacturing is everywhere else but in the United States for most of the industry. Now, the national minimum wage the national middle class wage for Afghanistan is based on the estimate somewhere between 2.75 and 4.13 million Afghans now fell into the various levels in the middle class. National poverty line percentage, according to the USAID.gov, more than half of Afghanistan's 30 million people live below the poverty line, and 11 million Afghans are acutely and severely food insecure. Additionally, the nutrition cluster estimates that 3.35 million children and pregnant and lactating women require nutrition support in 2020. All right, so who actually helps Afghanistan? Because, you know, they do have a big problem, but as you're going to see throughout all of these that I'm bringing to you, once I compare it to the United States, the numbers are not actually that far apart. Okay, social safety nets, USAID, and the UN Food Program. So they're the ones who actually help Afghanistan, you know, with money and bringing food and everything like that. But now listen to this. The price of 1 ounce of gold in Afghanistan, it's 146,866.70 of their money. What the price of 1 ounce of silver is 2,185. So gold and silver will always be important for an economy that, you know, is in shambles, because it becomes a precious thing to have. Okay, and right now you have the opportunity to actually you know, gather as much gold and silver as you can, but first take care of your preps. You know, there's no need to have I don't know, $100,000 worth of gold and silver when you have no food storage, when you have no way to filter water, when you have, no first aid kits or no guns, no bullets, no radios, no nothing. First, you have to prepare, and then you can actually have the gold and silver. That would be the best and easiest thing to do. Now, if you have the money, you can go for both, right? I mean, when you have all the money you possibly can imagine, then all the possibilities are open to you. But if you're middle class, working class, or poor, you got to take the baby steps. And those are the baby steps. Now, are there any preppers in Afghanistan? Now that I could find. And the reason that I want to ask this question on each individual country that I'm going to be showing you today is because people, one of the main things that I've seen, one of the common denominators is that most of these people live in big cities, right? And they don't prepare, their household, so they don't go out in the country, get a piece of land, and have some type of self-sustained system. All right, that's why I want to get the survival out of preparedness, because it's not just surviving the one thing. You have this whole entire, what we call it, ecosystem, I don't know, this whole idea that it's not just the one thing that you're preparing for, but rather that you have to have a self-sustained system to be able to feed your family, to keep your family safe, to keep them clothed, to keep them healthy. So if we can bring the idea of preparedness all throughout the world, then we can change the world, because we can tell people, all right, you got to take care of yourself. You cannot just always depend on the U.S. and the UN to help you with food, because one day the U.S. is going to collapse. And as you're going to be seeing here, most of the help that these poor countries get is from the United States. And if the United States is taken out of the equation, and therefore, because we also fund the UN, then the UN might be taken out of the equation. What's going to happen to all these billions of people who, or technically millions of people who, depend on the United States and the UN so much? That's why if we can bring the, the prepper mentality to people around the world, we can say, all right, have self-sustained systems that will help you and your family. All right, the next continent is Africa, and the most poor country there is Somalia. Hopefully, I said that grammarly correct. But anyways, I have a video introduction for it. Here it is.
Clark, Oxfam's humanitarian press officer, and in the last few days, I've been visiting Mogadishu in Somalia. The country is at the epicenter of the current food crisis, which has gripped the Horn of Africa, with more than 13 million people affected. Nowhere are needs clearer than here in Somalia, which not only has been affected by drought, but poverty and conflict. Getting aid in here is challenging, but it is getting through. Thanks to work we do with local partners, we're helping to bring in clean, safe drinking water for thousands of people who've been displaced by conflict and drought and are living in makeshift camps around here, the capital. We're also supporting a local partner which runs the largest care and therapeutic program for malnourished children and mothers in the country. Aid is getting through, and we're trying to scale up our programs as quickly as we can. And with your support, we are saving lives.
All right, one of the things that I forgot to mention a minute ago is that some of these videos are a little old because I couldn't really find much information about them. Some of the information is a little outdated, so some of those numbers may change. They may be a little better, they may be a little worse, but the point is that they're still within the same range, of poverty and aid assistance and having all this bad time. And as you saw in that video, people in Somalia compared to people in Afghanistan, or at least that one person that they interviewed, is that the person in Afghanistan, even though he's poor, sometimes he doesn't have money to eat. Oh, and by the way, they're eating food scraps, whatever was left over from restaurants and government offices. At least he had a home, a concrete home. Now, people in Somalia, some of them are not so lucky. They actually just live in a makeshift tarp, turned into a tent. So there's different levels of that poverty. But what I'm trying to show you here is that if right now you live in the most rich country in the world, and this is the other extreme to it, all right, your preparedness will help you fall in somewhere in between where you're going to be better off. Now, the population of Somalia is 15.44 million, and the inflation rate is only 4.1%. All right, the reason that I want to emphasize the inflation rate is because even though it's so, the inflation rate is technically low, all right, that doesn't mean that the economy is not bad enough to where people cannot afford a lot of things, especially when they go through droughts and famines and a bunch of other stuff. All right, so for Somalia, the national minimum wage, there isn't any. So that can also create problems, as I mentioned earlier. The national poverty line percentage is, the current rate is 73%. So 73% of the entire country is pretty much poor. 70% of the population in Somalia is under the age of 30, and the life expectancy is as low as 55. Unemployment among youth is widespread, as 67% of youth are unemployed, which of course that creates a lot of problems. There's no middle class, and of course no middle class income. And but I do have a video that I want to show you about the safety nets in Somalia, because again, if the U.S. and the UNs get taken out, millions of people are going to be suffering around the world. All right, here's that other video.
Muslima Abdurrahman narrowly escaped death twice in Mogadishu in the past 2 years while shopping for groceries. Insurgents regularly carry out suicide bombings at markets near her home. These days, Muslima shops online using a humanitarian e-commerce mobile app run by the World Food Programme.
It has become too dangerous to go to the shops, and we are also afraid of catching the coronavirus. We were lucky to get this application. We enjoy online shopping, it also saves time, and we get the food we want.
The UN's World Food Programme eShop app was initially set up to protect Somali women from security threats, either bombings in the capital or harassment in a refugee camp. But it's also become useful in helping them avoid large crowds at aid distribution centers, where they run a risk of contracting COVID-19.
I order food that I need on the day, such as rice or spaghetti. The delivery team brings the food to my home, and the shop owner withdraws the money from my card.
Around 100,000 Somalis receive cash aid every month from the UN. Beneficiaries receive a $60 stipend on the agency's special debit card to buy whatever they need. Hundreds of local retailers sell on the app, with purchases being verified on delivery using biometrics. The UN says the app is part of its global shift from food aid to cash.
Many years ago, when we were handing food, the people accepted the food. You could see in their body language how the dignity wasn't there. Because when you are receiving food, you are without having the opportunity of discuss or challenge, you don't have that strength. And you can see the body language of these beneficiaries have changed now tremendously. Because now with the cash-based assistance that we provide, they are the ones deciding where and what to buy.
The World Food Programme, which won this year's Nobel Peace Prize, says the success of the app in Somalia means it can be rolled out anywhere, and it intends to expand into other countries soon. Adeshewa Josh, TRT World.
All right, so a quick word from that video that we just watched. You know, that guy from the UN, he was talking about the dignity of the people. And you know, for him, and you know, it's true, when people are just receiving that food, that they don't have an option on how much they want to get, even if they like the food that they're getting or anything like that. So with this system where they're using the biometrics and, you know, pretty much mobile credit card systems and everything like that, it is better for morale for those people, so they can go and shop and you know, have more control on what is it that they want to get. And that is, I really do think that prepping will do that to people in other places, because let's say that we get the ball rolling for them, right? You know, they get their piece of land, they understand how to grow crops and everything like that. They would work for what they have, and they would have that sense of pride that they're the ones creating something. So that's why I really do think that preparedness would be important to take this message out there. And that's what I want to do with this company, with this podcast, with this community of preppers, with everything that I have plans to do, with this. And again, all of this will only be done with your help, just by simply getting the word out there and getting the audience to grow and everything like that would really, really help. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. The price of 1 ounce of gold over there in Somalia, it's 1,098,561.66 of their money. The price of 1 ounce of silver is 16,356.82. All right, so again, gold and silver are very important, because if you stockpile it right now, all right, by the time that something like this happens where the economy is really, really bad and the prices of gold and silver skyrocket, you're going to be better off. Now, I have this question for this one too, actually for all of them. Are there any preppers in Somalia? And the answer, of course, is no. They barely have anything to eat, but the understanding would actually make everything better. But this is something that I want to ask you. All right, you're a prepper. You're listening to this because you're a prepper, or you're learning about preparedness. Now, let's do this type of scenario where right now, right this second, you get dropped off in Somalia and you're told, here you go. You cannot get out of the country. You cannot get any type of U.S. aid. From whatever knowledge you have about preparedness, you go ahead and, make a life here. What are the steps that you would take? All right, and let me remind you, you have none of your gear. All right, you have none of your food stockpiles or anything like that. All you have is the knowledge in your brain. And, you would take the steps to have a better life there. What would you do? What would it be the first things that you got to do? And if you're lost without your equipment, then you're doing something wrong, okay? Because there's things that you can do just by knowing, how to farm, how to purify water naturally, how to do all these other things that I teach you in this podcast. So that is the question that I have for you. Could you survive in any environment if you dropped off there and you're given a year to live there, with a local currency, with the local problems, with, gangsters, wars or whatever, with whatever it is that you're dropped off and you have to live there for a year? Could you do it? All right, without any of your gear? Even if you do eventually create money in that environment to be able to start buying equipment or start buying gear or whatever, that would be allowed. But what I'm saying is that if you were to be stripped off right now and sent to one of these areas where they have a really bad economy, could you do it? With you and your family, not just by yourself, because that adds another level of stress. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Europe. And the poorest country in Europe is Moldova. All right, and I have a video introduction for Moldova. Here it is.
Moldovans are making their voices heard in the streets of Chisinau. Thousands of anti-corruption protesters are calling for the resignation of President Nicolae Timofti and for early parliamentary elections. They say they'll keep it up until their demands are met. In the countryside, the scene is quieter, but the frustrations that boiled over in the capital run deep here too. In small towns across Moldova, people share stories of poverty, unemployment, and disillusionment with their government. Zinaida Burak is one Moldovan who is struggling to survive. She sells melons by the roadside in the village of Sinjarei Inoi to supplement her meager pension. The Moldovan economy is in shambles and has suffered from terrible blows. Late last year, nearly $1 billion disappeared from 3 banks in a crime known as the heist of the century. Pensioner Vasile Moldovanu, a resident of Floresti, says it's a systematic problem. A struggling economy, exacerbated by corruption, has driven many Moldovans to seek work abroad. According to the World Bank, as much as 25% of Moldova's GDP consists of money sent home by labor migrants. Elena Lezehrique and her husband recently returned home to the town of Cahul after working in Italy for 10 years. In the town of Larga, widespread immigration to Russia and Western Europe has left the streets largely empty. Sergio Chimpoesh decided to stay and run a small shop, but he's prepared to leave if the situation doesn't improve. From the capital to the countryside, the views sound the same. In Chisinau, protesters are digging in their heels, pushing for change. But the country's deep-seated troubles and the anger they fuel are not going away soon.
All right, so that video that I just showed you about Moldova really proves my point on what I've been saying about the economy, okay? When the people of Moldova have been leaving, right? As you heard in the video, the streets are pretty much becoming empty because everybody's migrating outside of the area, going into Russia and other places in Europe in order for them to have a better life. The same thing will happen here in the United States if we actually do hit some type of inflation that is very severe, or maybe even if we go on hyperinflation, which I really do think we're going to, because our debt is tremendous and it's just going to keep piling on until the day it implodes. Okay, so this is the thing that you have to draw from that video alone, is that people will migrate, and the people who actually stay behind that will have family members that went abroad. In order for them to have a more of a normal life, they're gonna have to send money back from the places that they actually went to. That's exactly what Mexicans do, and for the longest time people were saying that this was a problem or whatever, but what Mexicans do is that they come here, they work, and they send the money back, right? The exact same thing is going to happen, but in reverse. People are going to leave this country, and I'm thinking they're going to go to China or other places that the currency will be a lot stronger than the United States. They're going to go over there, they're going to migrate, they're going to work, they're going to live, they're going to make a new life, and they're going to send money back for the family members who couldn't or wouldn't leave. All right, so you do have to make a plan that if you're not going to, if you have no interest in enduring any type of economic collapse whatsoever, that you need to go ahead and have everything in place for you to move, to make it easy on you, to have something established over there, all right, to whatever it is that is going to make it easier for you to go. You have to make those steps right now. But also remember that Europe, Mexico, Asia, everybody else all throughout the country, or all throughout the world, they're also going through the same, money problems, through the same economic problems, because everyone has been printing money at the wazoo. The only two countries that I can really think of, there are superpowers that have not done that, is Russia and China. They're the ones trying to keep their debt in control. They're the ones who are not overspending what they actually do have. Russia has been really good at that, and China has had the advantage that everyone throughout the world is making business with them because it's very, very cheap there. All right, so remember that if things get really bad, people will migrate, and the only way for you to have a better life if you stay here is that if they send money back. All right, so the population of Moldova is 2.658 million people. The inflation rate is 4.85%. The minimum wage in Moldova is the lowest amount a worker can be legally paid for his work. Most countries have nationwide minimum wage that all workers must be paid. The Moldova minimum wage is 1,900 Moldovan lei a month, which is about $96. $96 a month for private sector workers, and 1,000 lei per month, which is $50 for public sector workers. So people in government, they have worse time. The national poverty line percentage in Moldova as of 2018 was 12.80%, a 3% decline from 2017. So it got a little better, or maybe people actually fled, which make the numbers look a little better. All right, and so I have a video about the social safety nets. Now, I hope you have been seeing the differences between each continent, not only how people are dressed, whether or not they have homes, what type of government help they're getting, or, international help. Look at all those little details, because you're going to be able to see a resemblance of that in the United States when I get to those videos and, to that information. Now, this one is about the Moldova social safety nets in that country, all right? And pay close attention to it, because it sounds a lot like the United States. Here it is.
A knock on the door from a social worker is a welcome sound for this unemployed single mother of 5, especially if she's bearing a very welcome, if small, amount of cash.
I use it to pay electricity because I don't have water or gas. I cook on an electric stove. I also buy food for the children.
For the first time in her life, 39-year-old Mariana is receiving social assistance, thanks to the social worker who sought her out and helped her apply for benefits. Finding and aiding Moldova's neediest is a result of social safety net reforms, undertaken with World Bank support. Social worker Valentina has 262 families in her case file, many of whom would not survive the recent financial crisis without the cash.
This money helps them to stay alive, to exist.
Reforming the system means giving based on need and people's net worth. It wasn't popular with everyone.
The reform was not easy. It was quite sensitive, but the aim was to help the poorest.
And there are plenty of poor, judging by these applications for assistance that will be entered into a database where benefits are calculated and accurate records kept, reducing fraud and overpayment. The Robus have 11 children. The oldest has cerebral palsy. Their social worker checks to see how they spend their assistance. It all goes for food.
It's like a man rowing a boat. He is moving, but if somebody gives the boat a push, he goes faster.
Thousands of the poorest across Moldova are applying for and obtaining help thanks to social assistance reform. And as money reaches them, thousands of families are feeling a little tailwind pushing them along.
All right, so you can see that everything has a common denominator, right? They're getting help from either the government, from World Banks, from the UN, fraud program, World Food Program assistance, from the United States, whatever the case may be. But it always goes towards food, or the main thing is that it goes for food. She, like in this lady's case, she's also using it to pay the power. But the case, the thing that I'm trying to get across here is these are the things that you can use in preparedness, or actually that preparedness can help in this, right? Because if you're growing your own food, if you have your own livestock, if you have, a creek, a river, whatever body of water running through your property, if you have the rain catchment systems, if you have all of these things already set up and then this happens, where do you think you're going to fall between being the richest country in the world and, the poorest country in the world? Where do you think you would fall? It would be a lot better for you to do those things, to prepare. And these are the things that the people that are getting assistance for the most is food. That is the common denominator. Some are water, yes, like Somalia and others. They're also getting assistance with homes, with housing, assistance with clothing, assistance with hygiene, assistance with medical stuff. So there's this list of things that start to pop up that reflect a lot of the things that I've been teaching you in this podcast, the 14 categories, or, which is your plan, your alliance, but really it's food, water, energy, medicine, tactical communications, wilderness trading, boga bag, boga location, boga vehicle, hygiene, and clothing. And hopefully I didn't leave any out. But the point is that the things that I've been teaching you here reflect what is actually happening out in the real world. So that's why we have to pay attention to it. All right, so the price of gold, or 1 ounce of gold in Moldova, is 32,448.75 of their money. And 1 ounce of silver is 466.41 of their money. Are there any purpose in Moldova? No. All right, so hopefully I'm getting across that preparedness is really, really important, and it will really help poor people, all right? Especially if we get the ball rolling. And you live in the most powerful, richest country in the world, you should start getting the ball running right now. It should no longer be a hobby. You have to change your lifestyle. All right, now let's move to North America. Okay, and this video already showed it to you in the previous podcast, but I'm doing this on this one. also, but I'm gonna be editing heavily, so it's only gonna be at about 2 minutes. This video is naturally about 5 or almost 6 minutes, so I'm gonna cut a good chunk of it, but I want you to pretty much focus again on the food. All right, and again, Haiti gets help from the United States, from the United Nations, and from other people all throughout the world. All right, here's that video.
They look a lot like pancakes or cookies. The recipe passed down from generations here in Haiti. Women spend entire days making them. Grandmothers, daughters, and younger girls. Infants are nursed while mothers work the mix. Kids seem to enjoy them, at least when our camera was around. But these patties, known as bonbon terres by the Haitians who eat them, are a grim reminder of just how poor this Caribbean nation is. They aren't sweet, they're hard to swallow, and add almost nothing in terms of nutrition, because the cookies are actually made of dirt.
It fills your stomach. When we haven't eaten anything, this dirt cookie fills your stomach.
Traded, sold, and even hoarded by women here in the poorest section of the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, Cité Soleil in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Small amounts of vegetable shortening, salt, and occasionally sugar are mixed in with the dirt and water as well. Made in places like this, an old fort where torture was once common by corrupt dictators here. The Fort Dimanche is now a center of commerce built around the dirt cookies. A basketball court, soccer field, and school for hundreds of kids, and home to many. To get to the basketball court, which acts as a preparation area for the dirt cookies, you have to cross this open sewer, which is littered with animal parts and trash and other nasty things, to get to an area where the cookies are laid out to dry out in the sun. You can see that these are still very wet, not quite ready to be served, but this is literally dirt being prepared for humans to eat on top of other dirt and filth. Celine Denis' life revolves around the cookies. For days we watched as the grandmother sat mixing the dirt cookie batter. Selling the cookies is Denis' sole source of income and often her only food.
It's a necessary evil. I'm in a bad situation, and that's why I make them. It hurts my heart, but I have no choice. We're forced to eat it. It makes us sick, but not the way it would to anybody who's not used to eating it. Our system is kind of used to it.
All right, so you just heard that video, and the video is actually really sad because, you know, as you heard in the last part of that video, you know, towards the end, the lady said that she's used to it. You know, it's something that they have to eat just to have something in their stomach, to at least feel like they're not hungry. And if somebody who was not used to the cookies, they might even get sick. But they don't because they're used to it, because they've been eating it for a very long time. And, you know, the reason that is a very sad thing to actually think about is because all you're eating is dirt. They understand that they have nothing else. And right now, you know, you have the opportunity to make sure that your family is fed in the future. Now, this video goes along with the previous video that I made for this same reason. Because, you know, the U.S. government is going to start sending the child tax credit to people who actually, you know, were able to qualify for it. So depending on how old your children how old your children are and how many you have, you know, per child you can get anywhere between $250 and $300. But let's just say that, you know, you do need that money for rent, for groceries, you know, to get the kids' school supplies for next year. Whatever the case may be, if you need it for that, then wonderful. You know, it's a good thing that the government is using that to help you, and you should take advantage of it and help yourself. But if that money is going to go towards your, you know, towards your bank account and your savings account, then what you should really do is get the things that you need, you know, for your food preps, because, you know, everything that we have been listening to up to this point, what are people struggling the most with? Food. What are the governments and the UN and you know, other private organizations and everybody else, what are they doing? They're helping people with food. All right, so I could give you the whole list again and everything and the preparedness, but this time we're going to focus on the food, because that is the one thing, the main thing that affects people the most when we get to this type of poverty. So, you know, just on food preps, yes, you can get these foods, these buckets of food, which is the storable food that will last you 25 years plus. If you have the money for this, great. You can get it. It's gonna, it's gonna be able to be stored. It's gonna last you a long time, and it's gonna be where you need it. But that is not the only thing you can get. All right, you can also get the cans, which of course is really easy to get. You just go to the grocery store and you look at your meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's already all canned for you. So it's the easiest thing to do to just go over there and get it. Of course, you want to get only the things that you will eat. There's no need to waste money on things that you won't eat or your family won't eat. All right, but that is not where things stop. The next step for that is that you need to get seeds. And the reason that is because you want to make sure that you can replenish yourself. Because once you eat all of this food, you eat all of your canned food, then what do? Are you going to be waiting for the government to give you a handout? You're going to be waiting for the World Food Program to be giving you a handout? What are you going to do? You want to take the principles of preparedness, apply them right now, and start living a prepper life, getting the survival out of it, and making sure that everything is in place right now. So, and another, a step to go beyond that is that you can get your farm animals. You can get, goats, chickens. You can get sheep. You can get cattle. You can get rabbits. You can get turkeys. There's a bunch of other things that you can get, but that also takes money. All right, you have to look right now before the government help comes in and it burns a hole in your pocket to buy whatever it is that you want to buy that does not help you in your preparedness. Then you have to look at the cost. How much is it going to cost me to get a garden properly fenced in, and so I can keep chickens and rabbits and a bunch of other things out? All right, how much is that going to cost me? How big can I actually get it? Because you may be living in an apartment, but hopefully you have a family member that has a home with hopefully many acres that they're going to allow you to come in, make a garden in their space, and they can also reap from that. My point is that there's several things that you can do, and you have to look at the cost of it first, write it all down, look at everything you're going to need, and then, as the money comes in from the government or whatever it is that you're working and establishing this things that you're going to need in the future if the United States does collapse from the economy, or on the economy. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Haiti has a population of 11.26 million people. The rate of inflation now, this is where things change a little bit. All right, the inflation in Haiti is about 22.95%. That's high inflation. It's not hyperinflation, but things are pretty freaking expensive in Haiti. All right, so things can become expensive in the United States too. Now let's remember this, and I just remembered and thought of it. Once you have your own system running, you can make money from it. But even if you don't want to make any money from it, you can actually help other people, because you're gonna have a surplus of things. If your garden is big enough and you have enough chickens, you're gonna have more than you and your alliance can eat. And those extras, if you already put some aside for future, and whatever you have extra, in order to keep it fresh and doesn't spoil on you, you can give it to other people who are going to be in need. This is where you become a leader in the community as a prepper. And, you can get them to start their own system. Even if crap already hit the fan, people can start their own system. It's going to be more difficult. It's going to be more expensive probably, but it can be done. All right. And you can get the ball rolling for them so they don't have to be in despair. They don't have to rely on the UN to come in and give them food or anything like that. All right. So right now in the United States, we're experiencing inflation. And, the official number is about 6%. The unofficial number is 13%. And people are hurting right now. Imagine when it gets to the likes of Haiti, 22, 23%. It's going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to be double whatever it is right now. So we have to pay attention to that. The national minimum wage in Haiti, it's only $817 a year. So imagine just living off $817 a year. That is very, very low. The national poverty line, according to the United Nations Development Program, 24.7% of Haitians live in extreme poverty, which is less than $1.25 per day. Even more, approximately 59% of Haitians live on less than $2 a day. So, not doing much better for real. However, the rate of extreme poverty has started to decline since 2000. Well, that's 21 years, you know, and that's not real. I mean, even though it's a good thing, it's not like it's making a big improvement over the time that has already passed. Now, if they said, you know, it has declined since 2019, then it would be a lot better. But no, it's been 21 years. So the middle class wage is the you know, the average salary, you know, for people who are doing really good is $1,934,118 HTG per year. The most typical earnings is $508,195 HGT. All data are based on 69 salary surveys. So, you know, saying that, then it's not, then it doesn't really matter. All right, so their social safety nets comes from the U.S. and the UN. The price of gold for 1 ounce of gold in Haiti is $162,023.96 of their money, and 1 ounce of silver is $2,352.55. And are there any purpose in Haiti? No. All right, and another thing about gold and silver. Just look at how much gold and silver has increased there. Imagine how bad the economy is going to be here when it gets to those prices. When 1 ounce of gold is $162,000. When the price of silver, instead of being $30, is $2,352. All right, so keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and move to South America. Hey everyone, so this video is going to be split into 2 parts because when I edited and I finished, you know, putting all the notes and everything, the video turned out to be 1 hour and 48 minutes. So, you know, of course I'm going to split it in half. So this is the first part of this video. So I would really encourage you to look at the second part because, you know, all this information goes together and, you know, you get the bigger picture when you see both parts. So it's gonna pick up right where it left off. Okay, so it's not, you're not gonna miss anything. So right where you left on the last one, the next one's gonna pick up, which is gonna be South America, and then we're gonna get into Venezuela and then the rest of it, and I'm gonna compare how all of those countries compared to the United States when we're talking about poverty and, you know, how people eat and where they get the government help and everything like that. So I really do believe it's something that we have to understand, because if we get the things that we need in place right now, we're gonna soften the blow once the economy collapses. So I would really appreciate it if you could come back and listen to the second part and, you know, share it with your friends and family so they can also see what's going on around the world. All right, so again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.